Bigwater Fishing, Captain Ross here. You've probably seen some of our videos on redoing boats and things like that. Well, we're taking on a trailer build. We did one of these a number of years ago, and we're going to do it again here, and I've learned a lot throughout the process of doing a couple buddies. And so here we're going to take it step by step. First thing we're going to do in this trailer is we're actually going to take these walls off, and we're going to insulate and put some plywood up there. So it's going to make a big difference, and we'll explain why later. That's the first thing we're going to do is start stripping this down so we can put the infrastructure in that we want. On the first part of the basically trailer build, I think is what we're going to call this, you know, the walls were the first thing that we wanted to kind of go after. So the manufacturer, because I did order this trailer to kind of specs, would not allow anything but the walls that came with it unless we wanted to upgrade. And the walls that came with it were just that kind of cheap, like fiberboard and stuff you can't really screw into or do, I don't know about anything with. So the first thing we did was take that off. Now, fortunately, we were thinking a little bit and a little bit of help from the boys there of like, hey, what could we use this for down the road? And it was actually even for this build, actually using those pieces as a template. So over places where we have a beaver tail that you'll come to see in the rear of the trailer there, and also the wheel wells, they made a really nice template for cutting stuff that as we proceed here we'll talk about. But before we even got into that, and once we got all the screws out, all the trim taken off, labeled and marked, which was a big deal because we want to be able to put that right back where it came from, is insulating the trailer. So, you know, some people may skip this step, but you know, once you do, you can't really go back. So getting some sheets of 1-inch closed cell foam are going to perfectly fill that little void between the studs there. We found out real quick, you know, I already knew of using it in other projects in the past that, you know, that foam is really hard on knives or cutting objects. So for certain things, we use just a big X-Acto knife, razor knife, whatever you want to call it. But when doing a lot of cuts where we had kind of repetitive cuts, the one thing that we found out was, you know, using the circular saw and stacking those pieces up to make multiple cuts at one time was really a time saver. It is also a mess maker. So you may want to have somebody ready with a shop vac or do it in a place that you can keep that kind of contained. So once we got that all insulated in, the next step was putting up some plywood. And we chose 5/8 plywood because we wanted something that, you know, things could bite into. So when we mount some stuff on the wall, you know, down the road, batteries, different things that you're going to see here, that we were sufficient with that, but yet we didn't have an excessive amount of weight and also cost, as you know. But at any rate, so we wanted to find the fasteners. And fortunately, in a previous project, you know, screwing those to the wood, to the studs in there, which is aluminum, you got to really have just the right fastener. So I have found some fine thread self-tapping online, and we'll show you a little quick picture of those. And that's really a big deal, is making sure you have the right fastener. In addition, we also put some glue on there. I don't know if it made any difference or not, but you know, when we were in there, we were going to try to do it right. So we had some kind of sticky foam glue that we put on the studs as well, to help kind of have that hold up. The one thing that you want to make sure is, you know, you kind of proceed through on the, you know, putting that plywood up. And in the previous boat trailer deal that we did there, we kind of ran vertical with them, like you would, you know, sheets of drywall or something. On this one, we went horizontal, or putting those, you know, sheets of plywood long this way. Mainly because we had that beaver tail, and we just wanted to make things a little easier with keeping things square. Because we also wanted to have that plywood off of the floor about 1/2 inch, so any water that could get in there, you know, we wouldn't have that grabbing it and have that moisture that pretty much would never get out of there and just continue to kind of rot away. So having that just a slight bit up, but also making sure that we kept those square, so when we got down towards the end, you know, no matter which way it was, that we wouldn't have a hot mess there. And so taking times to, you know, use a square, use a level on that, and make sure, it's a big deal. Another thing that you probably have seen throughout here is you know, why are the bottom ends of those pieces of plywood painted? You know, at one point we used a white enamel on a couple cut pieces. We ended up putting some black on because we just had it around there. And basically that was just to kind of seal up those end grains that we were cut. And again, another thing, just not allowing that moisture in there. Is it an absolute deal? Of course not. But it's just another simple step to making sure that we keep that moisture out so those walls last a lot longer than I do, or at least my life with that trailer. You know, another little trick as you're putting this up, and especially when you're using plywood, you know, as thick as 5/8, is, you know, you start getting into some of these corners, especially near the bottle nose on the towards the trailer tongue, is, you know, router goes a long way to just putting a little chamfer on there so that those two pieces can meet and you don't have them buckling out or causing things that aren't going to hold together there, especially when we get to the next step. So something as simple as a little router bit to take that edge off will make the carpentry a lot easier and cover up a lot of the human error and definitely speed up the process. So once we had the walls up with the insulation behind them, you know, a lot of people may stop there, maybe they'll paint over that. And I kind of wanted to take it, you know, some of my buddies call it Rossing it, but I really wanted to make this thing so not only it was nice, but it's going to last a long time. And in the previous trailer, which I learned a lot in from, you know, what not to do, what to do, and fortunately I had a pretty good start in that other trailer, is, you know, we want to put FRP over that plywood. And FRP is fiberglass reinforced panels. A lot of people, you see them in bathrooms and things like that. And basically using some FRP adhesive, just basically slapping it on there with a trowel. And we went kind of heavy, to be honest, with the adhesive. And that's going to allow that stuff to stay on there really good and make those walls not only lighter so it's easier to see in there, but for the dings and stuff and just keeping it kind of waterproof. Those FRP panels are super tough, super durable. It's not cheap. It's gotten a lot more expensive since my last trailer. But I really think it's a step that, you know, makes it look a lot nicer, but also there's a lot of function there and a lot of durability. One of the pieces of advice that I would give you is when you're putting that FRP up, it's nasty stuff. It gets all over everything. So have a buddy or two to help you put that up. It'll make a huge difference. You almost need some guy to hold each edge, one guy to kind of check things out. Have a level there also, because as much or more so than the plywood underneath, keeping those panels square as you go, because we did run those vertical. There's really, I can't say not another way to do it, but there really isn't, because you don't want to get down to the end and have those things all crooked. It's going to look terrible and it's going to make cutting and things a nightmare, because in between each piece, which they're about 4x8 is a full sheet, there's like a little H channel that just kind of fits it in there so you don't see the joint. So get that up there, get her squared off. And the other thing I've kind of found is we like to use a float, you know, to kind of just squeegee down almost and make sure we get all the air out of there, make sure that stuff is nice and firm in there when it's up. And then once I feel like it's kind of where it needs to be, we hold it, and then we put a couple screws on the top just so that can't sag down. You don't come in the next morning and found out that, you know, that thing moved around, or even with the next piece. So as you have that H channel and you're trying to put the other piece in, you don't want another piece moving, because it will take a little bit of time for that to set up. So that's kind of a little learned thing. You know, make those screws up at the extreme top or bottom or wherever you're going to have trim to cover it. So even running a chalk line or something like that, so that you know where that trim is going to be, is kind of a smart thing, and something that we did in the previous model. Had enough veteran guys that are helping when we were doing it this time that we didn't need to do that. One of the other things that, you know, you'll learn with FRP, if you use it even one time, is that you want to clean up quickly. So once you had those screws in there, we kind of had things, you know, firmly, don't feel like it's going to move around on us a lot, is we get the sponge out and get it cleaned up, because it is an absolute disaster down the road to try to clean that stuff off the panel. It's going to look terrible because it has kind of like a bubble type finish in there. There are some smooth finishes, but those really kind of look dirty, and I found that those are not what I want long term. So use that sponge, clean up as soon as you feel like that thing's not going to move around on you, or it's kind of firm. It'll make a lot shorter work of making that look nice and get cleaned up. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video on putting the walls up on this new kind of trailer build. The next video we have up is actually doing the floor. So really kind of an in-depth process on that. A lot of different insight that hopefully is helpful for you guys for your trailer build as well.